Welcome to The Explainer. So, today we're going to look back at 2025 and talk about one skill, one really critical skill, learning how to separate the signal from the noise. We're going to explore how you can actually spot the difference between all that loud daily hype and the quiet, powerful trends that are truly building our future.
And this quote, man, it just perfectly sets the stage, doesn't it? It's such a sharp reminder that in this age of constant information, the things that feel the most urgent, well, they're often the least true. What we see going viral is almost never the whole story.
All right, so let's put this whole idea to the test. In our first section, we're going to look at the hot takes of 2025. You know, those simple, loud stories that just dominate our feeds, and we're going to try to find the real underlying signal that's hidden inside all that fuzz.
I mean, you see it all the time, right? These super simple viral stories trying to explain these incredibly complex situations. But these hot takes, they're almost always just noise, what our source calls the fuzz, and they totally distract from the much, much bigger picture.
See, the real signals, the things that actually matter, are these huge, slow-moving trends. So instead of getting caught up in the day-to-day political drama, think about this: the lingering effects of the pandemic, the massive shift in where we all work, and these broad social movements have fundamentally reshaped our cities in ways that online chatter just can't even begin to capture.
And you know, this whole signal versus noise thing, it's not just for politics. It's maybe even more critical when we're talking about technology, where the hype cycle can be absolutely deafening. So let's take a look at the long, winding road of tech innovation. So this year, it felt like AGI, that's Artificial General Intelligence, a true superhuman AI, was literally the only thing anyone could talk about. You had insiders confidently predicting it was just around the corner, creating this enormous wave of hype and speculation.
But here's the kicker, right? We have seen this exact same movie before. Just take a look at this timeline for self-driving cars. Back in 2015, it felt absolutely imminent. I mean, people were saying their kids would never even need a driver's license. And yet, here we are, a decade later, and while, yeah, we're seeing some progress, it's nowhere near a solved problem.
So what's the takeaway? The lesson here? Well, the parallel is just undeniable. Both AGI and self-driving cars had this massive hype and these wildly optimistic timelines. And if self-driving cars taught us anything, it's that the real path to innovation is almost always longer and way messier than the hype ever suggests. The wacky utopians might be right in the end, sure, but betting your entire strategy on an 18-month miracle, that's just a recipe for disaster.
Okay, so what if the most powerful signals out there aren't even about technology at all? Some forces are just ideas, concepts that work silently in the background for decades until suddenly, boom, their impact is everywhere. Let's dive into a really fascinating example of one of these powerful, slow-moving ideas, an academic theory about global population that quietly took hold over half a century ago and ended up changing the entire world.
And wow, this slide just lays it out so perfectly. A single academic concern about overpopulation, born on a university campus, became so powerful it shaped global policy and cultural norms for generations. And now, decades later, the script has completely flipped, and many nations are confronting the exact opposite problem: depopulation. This is a perfect example of a signal that was almost invisible for years, yet its impact turned out to be absolutely profound.
Okay, so this brings us to this really central tension of our time. This paradox, where we're creating this incredible technological abundance, yet the dominant feeling for so many people is one of economic anxiety and scarcity.
So on one hand, you've got this just mind-blowing abundance. Look at this chart. Thanks to companies like SpaceX, the cost to launch a pound of anything into orbit has absolutely plummeted. It's basically Moore's Law, but for space. We are living in an age of genuine technological miracles.
So this creates what our source calls an iPhone moment. Think about it, right? Just like cheap mobile computing unlocked the entire app economy, what new industries, what new possibilities are going to be unlocked when getting to space becomes radically cheaper? This is the abundance side of the equation.
And get this, even the things that look like economic bubbles can actually be a signal of this abundance. Today's massive debt-fueled spending on AI infrastructure feels a lot like the fiber optic bubble of the early 2000s. A lot of those fiber companies went bankrupt, sure, but they left behind the backbone of the modern internet that we all benefit from today. The bubble was the noise, the infrastructure was the signal.
But here's where that paradox really kicks in. Despite all this real-world abundance being created, our political conversation often feels stuck on the complete opposite. It's a clash between two competing ideas:
abundance, which is the hard, long-term work of making society wealthier for everyone, and affordability, which speaks to our immediate anxiety over the cost of living.
And that's the real conflict, isn't it? Affordability is just a much easier story to sell. It's a loud, simple message that speaks directly to people's immediate fears. Abundance is the actual goal of good governance, but building it is slow, it's difficult, and it's a much harder story to tell.
All right, so we've looked at politics, we've looked at tech, we've looked at economics. So what's the big takeaway? How do we pull all these different threads together into a simple framework that we can actually use to make sense of the future?
Well, this slide right here basically lays it all out. It gives us a practical framework, a filter for the world. On the noise side, you've got the viral Twitter takes, the 18-month AGI predictions, and on the signal side, you've got the quiet, powerful forces we've been talking about, those exponential cost reductions in tech and the slow, profound impact of demographic shifts. It's all about looking past the daily chatter to see the deeper currents.
And that, right there, leaves us with the final and maybe the most important question. In a world that is just drowning in noise, how will you find the signal? Because learning to filter the urgent from the important isn't just a way to understand 2025, it's the essential skill for navigating everything that comes next.